Welcome to the Caregiver Relief Podcast, where we explore ideas and innovations to make life easier and more dignified for both the caregivers and those they care for. I'm your host, Diane, a registered nurse. This episode is sponsored by myvitalvault.net, your all-in-one life organizer for aging adults and caregivers. It's designed to help you securely store your essential legal, medical, and emergency information in one easy-to-access place. Because when a crisis hits, being prepared can make all the difference. Join our Caregiver Relief community, a warm, welcoming space where you can connect with other caregivers, ask questions, share stories, and find support from people who truly understand. Visit community.caregiverrelief.com to join now, because caregiving is one of the hardest and most meaningful things you'll ever do, and no one should have to do it alone. And if this episode speaks to you, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. Every click helps us reach more caregivers who need encouragement, resources, and hope. Today's guest is someone whose work beautifully blends personal experience, creative problem solving, and style. So I'm joined by Gary Duong, founder and CEO of Chicable, a clothing brand designing smart, stylish, and adaptive clothing for people who face challenges in dressing. Gary was born with cerebral palsy, so he knows firsthand the frustrations and limitations that come with traditional clothing and what all the issues they create. By day, he's a talented software engineer. In his free time, he's a half marathon runner, a casual Nintendo Switch gamer, and believe it or not, a student of topology. But what makes his story so inspiring is how he's turned his lived experience into a mission, making clothing that empowers independence, preserves dignity, and supports caregivers in their daily routines. We're going to talk about how fashion can change lives, the innovation behind adaptive clothing, and why dignity in dressing matters just as much as function. Gary, I want to welcome you. I'm so excited you're here today. I'd like you to start by telling me about your personal journey and share a little bit about yourself and how your life experience shaped the person you are today.
Thank you, Diane, for having me. I was born, as you said, with cerebral palsy, and this has resulted in multiple adaptations to get around and adapt. For instance, I use a walker and a wheelchair because of balance and coordination and movement are affected with this condition. I can't drive, so I ride share. And I think having lived through that for much of your life would naturally lead you to look for solutions that people may have overlooked or haven't really considered. So I think my background is a bit unconventional. So I had studied for a degree in computer science at the expectations of my Asian parents. And then I was working in the corporate world for several years. And then during the COVID pandemic, people were starting their own businesses and sourdough and dalgona coffee, right? And I was thinking, okay, tech paid the bills, work paid the bills, but how can I make an impact beyond just making more money and building cool stuff? And then back in 2022, I noticed I had spent quite a bit on suits and blazers because that was around the time we were to return to office. So we had to look nice and corporate and professional. And then I had dressed up for a Christmas party. And I noticed it had taken me about 5 minutes to button because my fine motor associated with cerebral palsy had caused difficulty in manipulating buttons and that sort of
Yes.
And out of my frustration, I realized that not only me, but there were other people who may have similar issues, similar frustrations. So I pitched this sort of idea to some friends after we had some bubble tea and snacks. I said, what if I started like a business or something that provided accessible like buttons and stuff, but instead of buttons, you had like Velcro or something to make dressing up less of a hassle. And I meant it as a joke, like seriously, but they loved the idea. And I went to a local creative meetup group. It's a friend from church. He started this whole thing. And so I went to this meetup group and I pitched this idea to a bunch of also local entrepreneurs. They loved the idea. So we got on board with it, did the legal compliance paperwork. And then I launched Chicable around April of 2023. And then we have launched 2 products so far. And the word Chicable comes from 2 words really. Cheek, as in you look sharp and smart and sophisticated. And able for accessible.
Yes.
So we want to eliminate the hassle of dressing up, basically.
As a rehab nurse, I can tell you, I tease, I've dressed a lot of people. And I know the challenges for quadriplegics. I know the challenges for stroke victims, Parkinson's patients, cerebral palsy. There's a whole ton of illnesses and conditions out there where people are challenged to get dressed. And what I'd like to do, though, Gary, is for those who might be new to this concept, can you explain what adaptive clothing is to them?
So think of it this way. When we put on a t-shirt, we don't really think about it because there's an opening, right? At the base of the shirt, you just put in your head, put it into your head, and then you put it on. But consider someone who cannot control his or her arms, right?
Yep.
You need some way of bridging that gap between putting on the shirt and the ability to somehow lift the shirt and other movements. So adaptive clothing is a way to adapt clothing to your body. So now the clothing works for you, not you for the clothing.
For people, my listeners out there, the way rehab nurses approach putting on just a simple t-shirt is actually to put both arms in the t-shirt first and lift the opening to the head over their head so that they can put the shirt on a totally different way, because you can't get in one arm and the head in the other arm. It's just too uncomfortable. And there are ways, but it's challenging. Can you describe a few signature Chicable design features that combine style with ease of dressing?
So we have launched just one particular style where when you put on like a dress shirt for work or for a small occasion, you would normally notice buttons, right? You have to connect 2 pieces together. And instead of buttons, we have replaced the inner buttons with Velcro or hook and loop closure. So it's really snapping in 2 seamlessly. So outside presentation, people see the buttons, but between you and me, it's just Velcro inside.
You know
and
what
this does, yes.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And what this does is create a seamless design that makes you look good without making you feel like you have to fight the piece of clothing that you're wearing.
These features really stand out visually. So listeners, make sure you check out chicable.com to see them in action, because it really makes a difference. Now, Gary, caregivers often face daily challenges when helping someone dress. How does Chicable make that process easier?
So firstly, Chicable is all about modernizing the approach to adaptive clothing. When I was doing my research on how to sort of brand this, and I went to some adaptive clothing, and websites looked like they were made last century. By last century, I mean, it was
That's
like
why I had to contact
hands
you.
throwing fonts. And everything was white and sterile and like it was made for hospital. I didn't want that. Okay. It meant it with my vision. So yeah, first thing you notice when you go to the website, it's modern, it's clean. Okay. It's very, how do I say this? You're gonna like it. You're gonna love it. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there are videos on the website describing how to dress. But video doesn't really need to be there. You just put the two halves together and that's it.
I love that though, because there's a lot of people that don't know what goes into dressing a person with a disability. And one of the things I like about this is because you actually give the person, the disabled person, the ability to be able to do as much of their dressing by themselves as possible. And that's important not only for their emotional well-being, but for their self-esteem. It's hard for people, and I know you know this because I'm terrible. I don't want someone to have to do anything for me that I can do myself. And I can tell you now, as a rehab nurse, we have to be patient and sit back and let the person that we're dressing or helping, let them do as much as possible before we step in. And that's really hard because families are always in a hurry to get things done. Hurry up, get dressed, let's go, we gotta go. The person the quadriplegics that I've cared for and the stroke victims, they really like it when they have something that they can do themselves. And they don't feel as if they're taking away from the caregiver's time. So I think that's awesome. And if any of you are nodding your heads right now, I want you to go browse Chicable.com. There's likely something there that can help you or your loved one. So
that's CHICABL.com.
Yes. Thank you, Gary. Why is self-expression through clothing so important for people living with disabilities?
I think for people with disabilities, there's already so many restrictions, so many biases. Here's what you can't do. Here's what you can do to fix you. Like so many different constraints.
Yeah.
Clothing is one of the ways we can express ourselves to have freedom in expressing our identity and who we are. And so our motto at Chicable is that everyone deserves to look good and feel good looking good. So if the very first thing I do in the morning is to dress up, and I did it myself, right? That's going to set a domino effect for the rest of the day. Doesn't matter how the rest of my day has gone. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. That has set a precedent. And I know that the rest of the day will go well.
And that's a good point. And so many of my listeners are challenged with getting dressed or looking nice. And that's why I was so excited to be able to do this podcast with you, because when function meets fashion, we've got Gary here that's helping us make us look good and feel good from the start. And that's important. I was excited because we see so many people running around in their pajamas all day long outside. It's nice to add a little fashion. And especially now, Gary, we have an aging population coming. It's here, the silver tsunami. And I know that there are many seniors out there that still go to work, even post-stroke or even with Parkinson's. And I can see that this would be a product line that they would want to use. You're helping them look good, feel good, and in fashion, which is nice because you're right. So much of the adaptive clothing, it looks like it was from a nursing home in the last century. And that's too bad because you're raising the bar. You're like Emerald says, you're just kicking it up a notch. And I love that. Gary, where do you see Chicable going in the next few years? Are there new styles, fabrics, or collaborations in the works?
What we would like to do at Chicable is to have eventually is service-based design, where say you are a certain size or you like certain materials or you prefer a certain aesthetic. And we can do that on demand and basically customize whatever article of clothing to suit your needs.
Wow.
And it's still in the works for now as we're deciding, we're deliberating between, okay, who would like this, who would, so many different variables. But
Yes.
we had gone to a pop-up, our first vendor pop-up last year, and quite a few people had expressed that they would love something more customized. And we would like to make this happen.
I love that. How do you see adaptive fashion shifting perceptions around disability and independence?
I think often disability is portrayed as an afterthought or as not very mainstream in media. When's the last time you've seen someone with a disability shown independently or as a main character in a mainstream film? Something. And through the recent decades, I think the narrative has shifted a bit to where people with disabilities are a bit more mainstream. I think there's still some stigma. I think there's still some preconceptions or biases that need to be addressed. And one of the simplest ways we can address this preconception is through our clothing. If I am able to dress by myself or do whatever by myself, that confidence overflows and people around me, friends and family, will catch that. And then now the playing field is leveled, right? And I think what starts in our mind will come out of our mouth, right? And so adaptive clothing will shift this narrative in a sense that maybe we haven't solved every single problem we have, but we've solved one problem. And if we can solve one problem, we can eventually solve the other problems.
I agree. And I'm going to tell my listeners, make sure you keep an eye on Chicable.com so you don't miss their next new release or their next new fashion. Gary, what do you enjoy most about what you're doing here?
I love creating a product, or at least disrupting a sort of industry that I think needs a bit more attention. I've always been a proponent of never settle, right? If you're going to go, you go all in or you don't go at all.
You've got that entrepreneur spirit. I love that. I really do. And I'm excited because, as I've said, I've helped so many people over the decades get dressed. I know the frustrations, the person that needs to be dressed, and I also understand the challenges caregivers face when helping someone, because if the person you're dressing gets frustrated because it's uncomfortable to get in or hard to get out or hard to get on, it just, like you said, it just puts them in a spot when they start their day. It's a crappy note to start on. And I'm about starting your day with an attitude of gratitude and something positive in your life. I love that you're taking on fashion. I love that you're taking on fashion for those that need adaptive clothing. So, Gary, for caregivers listening right now, what's one piece of advice you'd give when it comes to choosing clothing for a loved one?
That's a very good question. First, just ask the loved one what they would like, because only they will know, as the person being cared for, right? Their preferences, what they fancy at the moment.
Yes.
But I think the single most important piece of advice is to see them as the whole that they are, the whole person. Not just the issue or something to be fixed, but the actual person in front of you.
I had my oldest son developed a severe pain condition, and he had been in the military. When he was discharged, he used to walk around with a cane, or he would have to use a wheelchair when we were at some places. And Jeff found it very frustrating when people look at somebody, like he would pull up to a disabled parking lot, because he had his placard and everything, and he gets out, and because people can't see a disability, and he was young, he was in his 30s, they would come up to him and tell him, you shouldn't be there. People can't see what we can't see and what we don't know. And it was very hurtful for him to have to say, I do have a disability. And people don't, and I'm bringing that point up because people also don't know what it entails to stay looking nice. And one of the things that I know with the young quadriplegics that I would help dress in the morning is when they'd go out, when this one gentleman was young, he was probably your age, and he was getting ready to go to work every day. And he didn't like looking wrinkled because you're struggling so much to put so many clothes on. Everything, the pressed shirt that he wanted to wear would always look discombobulated after we would press it out and stuff. But he was very, and there was no solution to that. He went and he felt people, they say people in wheelchairs are often overlooked and are invisible to us. He didn't want to be invisible. He wanted people to see him for who he was and what he wanted to look nice and professional because he had confidence. He just couldn't move. So I really like that you're helping the family caregivers and those with disabilities have a higher quality of life in their dressing arena. Oh, and I'm going to tell my listeners out there, if you're ready to make dressing easier and more dignified, you got to head over to Chicable.com to explore the options. Gary, I want people to know you're just starting out. You have a wonderful message. You have an incredible idea. I hope my listeners will share this with anybody and everybody that they know. There's somebody in their family that could benefit from getting dressed. And if you're planning a wedding or going to the prom, or you're just worrying about getting to work every day and you want to do it and look nice with adaptable clothing, you now have Chicable.com to contact through Gary.
We have a website for Chicable at CHICABL.com. And you can go there and browse, or maybe even buy a few articles of clothing for your loved ones, or yourself if you fancy.
Great.
We will also be reached on Facebook. I believe it's Chicable Apparel or Chicable. Just search for the icon with an upturned V.
An upturned V is the icon? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We are active on Instagram as well at Chicable Apparel. That is CHICABLE and then Apparel, APPAREL.
Well, thank you for your time today. I know you're a very busy man. I know I have visions of you running off to do a half marathon, running back home, sitting and playing Nintendo, and then saying, wait, I've got to design another shirt. Oh, I've enjoyed you today, and I wish you much success in your venture here.
Thank you for having me.
To my family caregivers, you are the most important part of the caregiving equation. Without you, it all falls apart. So please learn to be gentle with yourself. Practice self-care every day because you are worth it.